Chicago, home to the Electric Blues, Barack Obama, the White Sox, and also this week, the All Blacks.
Welcome everyone, awesome to be here in Chicago. First I'd like to thank the city for turning on for us.
The US city turning on the charm offensive for our boys in black.
The weather and all the fans that came to welcome to City. We've had some great events and it's going to be a great week.
The boys are there to play rugby this weekend against Ireland and hopefully right the wrong of the last historic game there back in 2016.
Rugby history! Ireland beat the All Blacks for the first time!
This is the All Blacks' financially most important test of the year because they are playing in the world's biggest sporting market in front of fans that they can hook in for life, really, and a market that will really, really want to see them return in 2031 for a World Cup.
Yes, the USA will host the Rugby World Cup in 6 years' time, despite the national team not even making the top 10 Rugby World Rankings. But before that, the US will also host the FIFA Football World Cup. That's next year. And in case you're wondering, the Americans have failed to even make the top 15 when it comes to the world's best football teams. But when it comes to early FIFA drama, well, their president has certainly delivered a top score.
US President Donald Trump has come out and threatened to move games away from cities that he doesn't like, one of which is right here in Chicago.
Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies, and on The Detail today, sports big gamble. Is the US the right place for the football and rugby World Cups? What will it mean for both games? Do locals care? Will it be safe for players under the Trump administration? And why are the All Blacks so crucial for success when it comes to the rugby tournament? Today I'm joined by RNZ sports journalist Jamie Wall, who was in Chicago ahead of the All Blacks game against Ireland this weekend. I started our chat by asking him, is there actually any interest in America for Sunday morning's international test?
No, there definitely is a bit of interest. Obviously, my view of it is coloured somewhat by the fact that I'm spending most of my time around the team and around New Zealand rugby officials and things. So to me, it seems like quite a big event. I guess if you go out and ask the average local, they might know about it. There is signage up around town, but you have to remember that this is a very, very busy time at the moment for American sports. We have the World Series. We're right in the middle of the NFL season as well. And on top of that, the NBA's just started. So the Chicago Bulls are playing 3 times at home this week. And the Chicago Blackhawks are playing in the NHL. We went and watched them play the other night. So it's a very, very crowded market. So I think the fact that this game is actually sold out at Soldier Field, which is a 63,000 seat stadium not far from where I'm talking to you right now, is a real testament to the All Blacks' pulling power. Like I said, the average local probably not too clued up on rugby, but the All Blacks, there is a bit of a brand awareness about who they are and what they're about. And I think that New Zealanders might not actually realise just how big a deal the All Blacks are in places like this. So it's been quite cool to see.
When you say 63,000 in the crowd, are they All Blacks fans, Ireland fans, Americans? What are we expecting?
Yeah, so a really topical question because we just had that confirmed today. We had the ticketing data released to us, which was actually really interesting because we don't usually get this sort of stuff. But NZ Rugby really keen for us to know that 72% of the tickets bought within the US market. And that's actually from all representation from all 50 states. So there's people coming around from all over the country for this match. And then the rest are international tickets, and that's from 43 countries. But there is going to be a very large Irish contingent. I think it's about a 5-hour flight from here to Dublin, and it's actually quite easy for Irish people to get into America, given the links between the two countries. And it's a popular destination for Irish people, obviously, because there are so many family connections over here. And it's one of the reasons why this venue was chosen for this fixture back in 2016 and why the two teams are returning here for this match 9 years later. It's obviously been massively boosted by the fact that the All Blacks and Ireland have established a really serious rivalry over that time. And the matches since that historic win by Ireland have been split 5-5 in the 10 test matches played since then.
And Ireland have beaten the All Blacks
Blacks are back in the World Cup picture. Ireland's quarter-final curse continues.
So there's a lot of anticipation, not just from an event perspective, but also from a rugby perspective. This is one of the top-tier games in Test rugby right now. So from the spectrum of, hardcore rugby fans that are really, really into international rugby to people just kind of wanting something to do this weekend, it's sort of capturing everyone on those ends and everyone in between as well.
Oh, it's going to be a goodie, and obviously redemption for our boys. But how important is this game for the coach, Scott Robertson? Because it's sort of been a little bit mixed for him of late.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of pressure on him for this because while the All Blacks have been winning some big games, and I think back to that game against the Springboks at Eden Park and the Bledisloe Cup tests, there is this kind of perception the All Blacks have struggled for consistency, especially during that rugby championship where they went win-loss, win-loss. And one of those losses was actually the worst loss the All Blacks have ever suffered in their entire history, that one against the Springboks in Wellington. So I think for him to string together a really good back end to the season is going to do a lot for the confidence of fans, because I feel like out there the jury's kind of still out on Scott Robertson as an All Black coach. He's obviously a very successful Super Rugby coach with the Crusaders and that. And it kind of like a lot of players are, it takes a while for a lot of people to be convinced that they belong at Test level. And I think that that's the perception of him right now. So he did coach the All Blacks to a win in this corresponding fixture last year, which I feel like would probably be the most satisfying win of his tenure so far, because there was a lot of pressure on that. And he'll be looking to repeat that because, of course, like I said, Ireland have caused the All Blacks a lot of issues in the last decade. So to beat them again and hopefully do it convincingly will set up hopefully a change in that narrative.
Now, there'll be more eyes on this game in light of the fact that the US is hosting, I can't believe this to be honest, but are hosting the Rugby World Cup in 2031. A, how surprising is that? And B, does anyone care over there about this?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, because the question of whether the hosting of the tournament would even go ahead was still up until about a couple of months ago at World Rugby level, because they just weren't sure that it was actually going to be able to work in a US market that is so dominated by their traditional professional sports. And of course, the main one that it's going up against is American football, which really in dollar terms is like in another galaxy compared to what rugby is. You're talking about teams with rosters worth upwards of sort of billions of dollars and playing in stadiums that are costing billions of dollars and then get torn down and replaced by another one after only about 15 years. So it's really like a completely different conversation in terms of like the market that they're trying to break into. And however, because of that brand recognition that the All Blacks have here, and when I say that, I mean, like, people might just be familiar with the haka, they might just be familiar with the black jersey, but they're really going to have to lean heavily into what Americans do know about rugby here, and it is the All Blacks. And as much as, other teams have had success, and we can talk about the inconsistencies of the All Blacks lately in terms of on-field results, if an American is going to know anything about rugby, it's likely to be the All Blacks right now, as well as Alona Ma, who's been such a big presence on social media for women's rugby. Unfortunately, she's not going to be playing in the 2031 Men's World Cup, so they're really going to have to help leverage off the All Blacks. Now, this is really good news for NZ Rugby here, because it means that they can bring World Rugby to the table and say, well, okay, you can meet us in the middle on this, and hopefully influence some governance decisions around stuff like, scheduling and player load and just the general governance of the game that could help in NZ Rugby's favour here. So it's a bit of a crisis being looked at as an opportunity, which is, not uncommon here in America. This is just what this country is kind of about. They call it the land of opportunity, and this is NZ Rugby hopefully taking that opportunity for themselves.
Nice. Is there a bit of schmoozing going on, a bit of, event holding and stuff at the moment while you guys are there ahead of the World Cup, to get that feel?
Yeah, absolutely there is. I was lucky enough to attend an event last night with Gallagher Insurance, who came on board as a major commercial partner for the All Blacks. I met their CEO and their executive. Felt a little bit out of place in a room full of extremely wealthy American businessmen.
You would have
but
held your
nice.
own, Jamie.
Well, I hope I did. And later on this week, World Rugby are having their council meeting here in Chicago to coincide with the test, which, will involve a lot of NZ Rugby officials, who will be pressing their cases for what I just mentioned before. So it's all sort of coming together quite nicely in terms of the schmoozing aspect. Obviously, this is the biggest market that the All Blacks will play in. Gallagher is a major player in the insurance industry here, and they were really, really happy to have the All Blacks come along and impart a bit of wisdom to a room full of some of their key clients. So it's that sort of stuff that gets done away on these tours. It's not new. It's something the All Blacks have done for a while. But you kind of get the feeling there's a little bit of an extra edge to it this week, just given how much money is floating around this market.
Gosh, a lot. Now, what about the US men's team? I don't even think they're in the top 10, Jamie. Are they going to develop sort of fast enough to even be competitive on home soil in 2031?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question and a really valid argument. And it's one that's been brought up this week when we have had these meetings and media opportunities with NZ Rugby. And basically, they've been pretty upfront in saying that, while World Rugby going to leverage off the All Blacks, there's actually sort of nothing much they can do to help USA Rugby develop the game here.
Perhaps case in point, here is a television interview with an American rugby player after the US secured the World Cup hosting rights.
For those of us who don't really know a whole lot, can you just kind of briefly describe how rugby works? Because I know it's a little confusing.
Yeah, well, conceptually, think a little bit of baseball, American football, right?
Okay.
NFL, think football, but the continuity aspect of basketball and soccer,
okay.
Right? So it's a continuous sport, it's a continuous game, it's packed full of action.
It's still a very small sport from their perspective. If you take away, the All Blacks showing up here and holding an event that's going to draw 63,000 people to a stadium, it's a game that's pretty much amateur. It's played at collegiate level at a lot of universities, but at a pro level, they have Major League Rugby, which is having a lot of problems simply staying afloat at the moment. Teams are falling over. So there's some real concern about the game's health here, and some very valid ones as well. I think that it's a problem for World Rugby to address. They were the ones that wanted to have the World Cup here.
It's a mandate for the future of the sport, which brings unprecedented certainty, unparalleled opportunity and great excitement as we look to develop our sport as never before.
And it was one of the things that got brought up straight away, you want Americans to buy into this. They're going to want to support their own team. If that team is no good, it's going to be a really hard sell. The counter argument to that was, we heard all this when we said we were going to host a World Cup in Japan. Now that's Japan, a test nation that was famously beaten 145-17 at one point by the All Blacks.
So Gavin Hastings' world record of points goes, world record in a major international, that is. And fittingly, that is the last act of the game. It was an absolute rout. The All Blacks are winning by 145 points to 70.
By the time the World Cup rolled around, Japan had invested heavily in their game, hired Jamie Joseph and Tony Brown as their coach, and reached the quarterfinals. And probably what was the main narrative, apart from the Springboks winning that World Cup, of that whole tournament. Now, can the USA do that in that shorter space of time? It's probably unlikely, but they can potentially, if they can make the right hires, get some of this money that's floating around, they can at least improve themselves, because they definitely have the athletes here to be able to do it. It's more about bringing in the IP and solving some of the logistical issues, because this is a massive country. Just simply getting from one game to another it's not like in New Zealand where you can catch a bus from Albany over to Eden Park and play a game like that. These take plane trips. Plane trips cost money. All of this costs money. They've just got to be able to find it.
Now, before we even get to our 2031 Rugby World Cup, we've got the FIFA Football World Cup, which is going to be next year. Is this sort of serving as a test case for how America handles major international tournaments that are not their kind of main game? How's it all looking?
Yeah, and not just that, there'll be an Olympics here as well the year after in Los Angeles as well. But yeah, there has been a lot of talk about the FIFA World Cup next year. It's been in the news, not just for sporting reasons, but political ones as well, because of course, US President Donald Trump has come out and threatened to move games away from cities that he doesn't like.
The answer is yes. If somebody is doing a bad job, and if I feel there's unsafe conditions, I would call Johnny, the head of FIFA, who's phenomenal, and I would say, let's move it to another location. And he would do that. He wouldn't love to do it, but he'd do it. Very easily he'd do it. Boston better clean up their act, that's all I can say.
One of which is right here in Chicago. FIFA have come back and said that's not going to happen. This is on a completely different scale to what rugby is. I mentioned US sports. The relationship that FIFA has with major governments, that it's almost a country in itself, and it acts in a very diplomatic kind of way, and the way that these deals are brokered, and that they use the World Cup as almost a political incentive to get things done. So it's a massive, massive deal. I mean, all you need to do is look back to when Russia hosted the World Cup in 2018. One of the conditions was they had to stop their incursion into the Ukraine that had been ongoing since 2014. That was done. And then once the World Cup was over, they promptly reinvaded the country. So that's the sort of level that we're talking about here, the sort of things that FIFA can the strings that FIFA can pull. Now, when you talk about the World Cup, the Football World Cup, I mean, the main topic of conversation, at least lately, has been money and how much these tickets are going to cost. And they've introduced this thing that's going to be maybe something that New Zealanders might have to get used to, called dynamic ticket pricing, whereby instead of buying tickets, you simply put your name down and then they'll adjust the price according to the demand, and then that's what you have to pay for the ticket. And it pretty much prices out anyone who's not willing to pay some really big money to go and watch sporting events, concert events. It's part of the way that they do it here in America right now. NZ Rugby is using a dynamic ticketing model for this game on the weekend, because they managed to sell 50,000 tickets within 36 hours of them going on sale. And then they deliberately held back the remaining 13,000 to test the dynamic ticket pricing.
So how much are you paying?
Well, it's a lot. We're not 100% sure. They weren't so too forthcoming with the details, but given the exchange rate, it would be a lot more than what you'd be paying to go to a test match in New Zealand. I can tell you that much.
Wow, gosh. Just going back, you mentioned Trump and what he's up to. Are any of the sort of players or teams or anything worried about sort of potential issues with ICE or border control during these international tournaments? You know, that they might be getting a second look because of who they are, where they're from, perhaps their makeup in a sensitive way. Are there concerns there?
Well, I did have a word to the All Black staff today. They obviously weren't too keen to go on record talking about this because, they try and stay away from these sort of political issues as much as possible. But I have to be honest, like, the area that we're in Chicago is very safe. It's a very clean and beautiful city for the part that we're in anyway. I can't speak for the rest of it. And they did say that there haven't been any sort of security concerns. The All Blacks, you might be interested to know, have their own security detail that goes with them everywhere that they go. This place is obviously no different at all. And I was told that there hasn't been any heightened risk or anything identified in Chicago for this game. Obviously, the All Blacks aren't like massive superstars here, so they are freely wandering around the streets. As far as immigration and that whole topic is concerned, again, it wasn't really raised. I mean, they obviously all got through customs, as did I as well. It was actually a pretty smooth process, to be honest. I was quite surprised, and the guy took one look at my passport and waved me through. So I can't speak for everybody that's coming in and out, and I understand that there's some massive, massive issues regarding immigration and things. But as far as the All Blacks are concerned, it hasn't affected them at all. Now, when we talk about the FIFA World Cup next year, that could potentially be a different story, because there will be a lot of countries that don't have as good relationships with the US as New Zealand does. So that could be something that comes up in the future. But honestly, the way that things seem to be changing here on an almost daily basis, just in terms of what you're hearing about the way things are going, I couldn't tell you exactly how severe those might be, because there just seems to be a lot of disinformation flying around. And I guess you're only going to know if you actually go and apply for an American visa or a green card or anything, just how difficult it's going to be.
Right, let's get back to today and the game this weekend when the All Blacks take on Ireland. I asked Jamie who he is picking to win based on current form.
You know how much I love doing predictions. I think the All Blacks should be quite confident going into this game. They really touched up Ireland when they played this fixture last year. I think one thing that not a lot of people are talking about is that Ireland are coming in off the back of a kind of disrupted season because of the British and Irish Lions tour. And yes, a lot of them played in that Lions team, and it was coached by Andy Farrell as well. But I just wonder how much motivation they have left for the rest of the year, because for them, playing in the Lions would be the peak of a career, let alone just one season. And this team hasn't played together since back in March in the Six Nations. So if I were the All Blacks, I'd be feeling reasonably confident. So I think the All Blacks will take this one out probably by about 12 points.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. Thank you to Jamie Wall. This episode was produced by Gwen McClure and engineered by Phil Benge. I'm Amanda Gillies. Matua.
This is Hannah Berner from Giggly Squad. O-Pill is the first over-the-counter daily birth control pill available in the U.S. Let's be real, getting a birth control prescription is not always easy, and it's so much admin. In fact, about a third of women face barriers to access prescription birth control. Between scheduling appointments, missing work, class, or just trying to exist, it's a lot. But now O-Pill is putting birth control in our control. O-Pill is a daily birth control that's FDA approved, full prescription strength, and estrogen free, and 98% effective when used as directed. Grab it online or at most major retailers, no prescription or doctor's appointment needed. So if you're thinking about birth control, check out O-Pill to see if it's right for you. Use code GIGGLY for 25% off your first month of O-Pill at OPILL.com. That's code GIGGLY at OPILL.com. Birth control in your control. We love to see it.